Today, we have a special guest who is here to help educate us and our audience about the effects of online toxicity. Also, give an insight into how a community of support can foster growth in the esports world. Our guest, Jess, represents a growing number of people who have aspirations to grow in the esports community, particularly as a player. Though being female and a strong advocate for human rights for so many different minorities and marginalized groups has left Jess exposed online. Jess is here today to share her experiences, and we hope it can educate people further on why tackling toxicity in esports isn't just to make the game more enjoyable for the players. It's in the best interest of the largest esports organizations to stamp down on this behavior, as it directly affects the positive growth and the continued success of the esports industry. Jess, thank you for joining us today. Really looking forward to the conversation.
I'm looking forward to this because this is an issue that I'm very passionate about, having a lot of
Amazing.
firsthand experience.
Yep. I just want to, before we start to move into the topic, I wanted to ask you just what kind of gamer are you, and what games do you play, and what was your first experience with esports?
So I'm primarily a CSGO player, but I do play other games like Warzone and Rainbow Six Siege and Among Us and Fall Guys. So I've been kind of gaming casually my whole life, but it wasn't until I kind of heard about somebody's son wanting to become an esports player someday. He's only 14, and which I kind of got into the scene, and I thought, well, maybe I can make it too.
Yeah, awesome. That's cool. I think a lot of people can relate to that. In this growing world, it's we see a lot of the success, but it's much like many other competitions in the world. There's a lot of people at that beginner level to intermediate coming through, which is why we're here. Really, is to explore that world at the moment. And before we, I wanted to start off with a question that I think is, you would often hear yourself, and I've heard it often from parents is, when we come to this discussion of toxicity online and harassment, usually the answer we get from people is, well, why don't you just stop playing? Why do you keep playing? If this is happening online, just stop playing. What is your, what is your answer to that?
I mean, I've
Before,
certainly gotten that response that, hey, what are you doing here if you can't take it? It's like, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, right?
mm,
And I'm thinking that no, like I should be able to enjoy myself on gaming servers without having to be harassed and whatnot, because I'm there to enjoy myself, and I think everybody should be allowed to enjoy themselves.
yeah, 100%. So I think, my answer to people usually that is, if you love something, why is it that you have to put up with harassment? If you love a job and you turn up to a job and people are harassing you, you shouldn't have to stop doing it. That you're not the issue here. No one, is the issue. It's the people within that realm causing the
It's
problem.
like I
So
was having a similar conversation with my cousin who lives in Texas, and about how she lives in a predominantly white area, and she often gets people making racial comments about her because she's a doctor too, and people kind of think that she's not competent because she's not white. And yet,
mm,
why does she still keep practicing? Why doesn't she move to another state where it's more diverse?
yeah, and I think that's really important to answer that early, because I think a lot of people, when they think about this, they think about esports. Part of it is they don't have the knowledge yet, or the information to know that this is much more than just, to a lot of people, than just, you know a silly game you play online. That people are actually taking this as a hobby, as a constructive outlet for something to do with their possibly career, or as their passion. So I think nipping that question in the bud early, to say that we're not here to just turn it off and ignore it. We're here to look into this and find out more about it, and how we can possibly start moving in the right direction. Um, and I guess I want to hear from you more, is what is toxicity, and what is harassment online? How does that range?
So there's definitely like a whole spectrum of toxicity. I like to think like on the more milder end, it's comments like "you suck," "just quit," where it's not as personal. And then on the other end, like there are things that are way more personal and really hurt deeply. And these are like homophobic, racist, sexist slurs, sexual comments, because like that really hurts you on a personal.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, on what you mentioned around, like, why not quit? I think one thing that is important is also it's kind of like bullying at school, right? Like if you bully someone in the school, you're not telling the guy like, hey, leave school. Like like you have to help them. And also maybe it might be wasting some talent. Like there would be some kids that actually could make it to the professional scene, but because of the toxicity, they are not, like they are just not taking it as well as the others, and therefore they might miss out on the opportunity just because of like a few random people just making fun of him online. So I think that that's something that really affected me as well when I was kid, because I was playing a lot with older players, which were, because when they're older they're able to take on and understand the joke, right? But when you're younger, it's harder as well. So when I was practicing, everyone was looking, oh, stop playing, why you playing, why you keep playing, you're too bad. To me it had like a opposite effect, where I was like kind of trying to prove them that they were wrong, and then one day when I beat them I was so happy. But um but it like all the other comments, like around, as you said, like that are personal, these ones can really affect you, right? And affect the way you enjoy the game, really. And one of the question I had is like, how bad was the effect on you, like when you receive those kind of comment? What kind of effect that goes to you? Is it like you have the effect that you want to beat them, or what's your reaction to that?
So a lot of times when I get those comments, I just kind of brush it off and just thinking, oh yeah, they're just ignorant. They're probably just kids. Oh. And but I mean, I've certainly gotten those kind of comments from older people too. And I do notice that most of the CS:GO community does tend to be older, like people in their 20s, even some in their 30s.
Mhm.
But age doesn't mean anything when it comes to how people treat you.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to get into the detail too much, but I was wondering, I think it could be interesting for either parents or children to understand, like, what does some of the experiences that you have faced. I don't know if you have some example that you would want to share. Obviously, like masking out all the
Oh, I do.
sexual and things,
I mean,
or
I won't make any sexual comments here because, or
Mhm,
I won't mention any of the specific slurs that have been said to me just to keep this family
mhm,
friendly.
perfect.
But I will talk about one incident that really hurt me deeply. And it was when me and a friend were queued together for a game, and I play with him a lot, so we know each other very well. And he's always looking out for me, but it's the other three people that were really giving me a hard time. And as soon as I started talking on voice chat, they heard my voice and they started making sexual remarks about me, talking about wanting to do inappropriate things to me. And at first it was just verbal until it started getting physical, where one of them threw a Molotov at me so I would burn to death, and basically team killing me. So after that, they started body blocking me so I couldn't move. And and to the point where I accidentally shot one of them because they stood in the way, and they deliberately moved into the way so that I would team kill him. And on CS:GO, you team kill someone 3 times, you get removed from the match. And I got removed and I got a 30-minute ban because they were doing that to me. And right after the game, I remembered how I felt, how hurt I felt that they had to do that to me. And I got my friend to, and as well as myself, to report all those 3 people for their behavior. And from what I know with the report system is that I know it's been through some changes, but it seems like those people, I've checked their profiles, have not received any bans or anything, that they're still out there and at large, as I know, because after another time I was queued with my friend again, and we got those 3 people again. Luckily, they were not doing anything to me, and I muted them on voice chat from the beginning because I didn't want to take a chance. I know how they're going to be like.
Mm. I guess to really put that into perspective for people who haven't been heavily involved with esports before, it's equivalent of turning up to a game of soccer and someone refusing to let you play, refusing to let them be on your team, isolating them from the team, and then making them leave when you've done nothing wrong and you get to keep playing. And you know, if you're a parent and you saw that happen to your kid, you'd be devastated. And obviously the effects on the kid is 10 times worse, or the person. So I think, you know, it's such an intense emotion in terms of, you know, of being isolated like that just because you're female, which is insane. But it's not an isolated event either. Yeah, this is something that seems to be happening. How did you deal with that? How did you
Like that specific incident, or?
Yeah.
So yeah, of course I wanted to cry after that. I mean, I couldn't play another game for 30 minutes anyways. So I literally remember I ran to my room and cried after filling out the incident report and getting my friend to do the same, because I have a feeling, and I've been told that if more than one person reports somebody, they may look into it, but I don't know.
And was that kind of one of the earlier experiences, or how you dealt with it? Because I know when we last spoke, you've come quite resilient to some of the stuff that's happened. Is that one of the earlier ones you had in terms of those experiences?
No, that's actually a pretty late. That was in June.
Okay, interesting. When did you kind of start realizing that there was this kind of community online from a competitive, side? Was it straight away, or was it something that crept up on you?
I've been gaming for a long time, and I've been playing online games for quite a few years, and I do notice that people can be pretty rude online, so it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I know some other games like Rainbow Six Siege and Overwatch have taken action against toxicity, and I know that especially in Rainbow Six Siege, people are getting banned specifically for toxic behavior, and it's announced to the whole community. It's on the main menu. It's in the game. It says so-and-so has been banned for toxic behavior. So it does mean they're taking action. But at the same time, I feel like with CSGO, it's really just the wild, wild west. Like with kind of anything goes. There is really no moderation. I know that recently they've updated the report system, where if you receive more than a certain amount of reports for abusive chat or whatnot, you can't talk in game. You're muted. You can't use chat in game. As well as they've introduced a word filter, which I think doesn't affect anything, because you can't filter what people say on voice chat.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just like slapping a band-aid on the issue and not really addressing it.
Yeah. And I think we're going to get deeper into this whole topic of, where do we think this comes from, and why does it seem to be, happening? It happens across the board with other games, but CSGO seems to be quite a common issue. And I think we can dive into that deeper. What are some other things that you've kind of gone through outside of that experience?
Certainly other instances of people, again, making comments about me. Certainly I've been team killed more times than not, just for being a girl. Yeah, that's kind of all I can think of right now.
And you've told me a little bit before about people just blocking you in, rather than actually playing the game as a team. They isolate you into a corner and then just refuse to let you play.
Surrounding, like that particular incident, they were blocking me, like standing around me, so I couldn't even move.
And
when I told them to get out of my way, they said something very inappropriate about me.
Yeah. So it's once again, that's the equivalent of, turning up, it's like turning up to, a game of chess or a tournament for chess, and then people just cornering you into the wall and not letting you participate, and then also not playing themselves, just spending their whole time bullying, pretty much, which is so bizarre.
Exactly.
Is there anything, I mean, people obviously say a range of things to you. Without going too deep into it, is it usually in terms of the detail? Is it usually isolated into your gender? Is it usually isolated to race, or is it? Do they
Well,
just?
I mean, it's hard for them to see my race, obviously.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I have that much of an accent.
No.
I mean, I definitely have people say that my voice sounds funny and whatnot. But I would say most of the comments I've received are gender related more than anything else.
Just to jump on that, like, do you feel? I mean, have you ever been in a game where they were toxic against someone else that was not a girl, for example? And do you feel that
Yes.
being a girl actually increase the risk of like getting that toxicity?
Definitely.
So generally, if you're in a game, like if people are toxic, they will directly go to you instead of trying to attack someone else. If they know you are a girl, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a really bad place. I mean, on top of that, it's full of it's probably like 90%. I don't know the numbers, but I would assume it's like a lot of guys in and
It
like
is predominantly male, yes.
yeah, if I compare it to like I studied computer science, right? And in computer science, it's predominantly males as well. But we were like the girl that were with us in the study. We never did any toxicity to them, since they were really happy with being. There were no issues between guys and girls. Like I don't, it's just in the game. I think because it's online, some people are
I
just
agree.
so I'm wondering, like, because toxicity exists since I was 13, actually, when I looked, I started experiencing this. I've never been involved directly with it. I was lucky to have people like that protected me when I was playing. So I had people like actually fighting against, and also in the community I was playing was really small community, so people knew each other even in real life, right? But so it was like a bit harder to be toxic, or if someone was toxic, we kind of knew this person was toxic and would either kick him out or not listen to him when he was talking. But in your case, I think you have been going through this for quite some time right now. Like the question I have is, does it get easier with, not easier, but do you cope with it better with time? And have you developed some mechanism to help you get through this? So maybe some other people that are going through this right now could use your experience.
So I definitely would say that I try to play with consistent people, that I play with the same people every few times. Like if I sometimes am in a game and I notice these people are treating me very well and being good team players, I would say, hey, you want to queue up? And usually they say yes. And then we stick together and we end up playing together regularly. So I know that they are not going to treat me that way. And if somebody who we're not queued with treats us that way, I know we've certainly had to kick people, and we have done that.
And you've had some other really interesting things you've done through social medias where you've started writing down some different topics or things that people have said to you to kind of show and I guess expose some of these things online. Can you just explain a little bit about that, what you did there and those projects you're doing?
Yes. So now what you're talking about is my walls of shame. I made the first one last year after just a cumulative amount of incidents left me wanting to quit CSGO, and I thought I was quitting permanently at that time. So at that time, I decided to come up with the wall of shame. I'm actually going to pull it up right now, and I'm even going to read some quotes off of it. Don't worry, there's no swearing or anything sexually
That's okay.
explicit. Like I said, we're keeping this family friendly.
Yeah.
So
No, I do think it's a really interesting thing here that you've done. So I'd love to hear
the walls of
about.
shame basically are an anonymous collection of quotes from people who've said things to hurt me, and basically I decided to make them as a way to show everyone that this is what I'm going through. This is real. That harassment hurts, and I'm gonna read off some quotes from my from the last wall of shame I made. I hate your girl voice. I'm not going to shame you for that, but I'm going to be like very sexist about it. You're a girl. Girls aren't real. I hate your stupid voice. Hey, everyone, Blue is a woman.
Yeah, and I know I've seen that board myself, and I know it's the intensity of it can be turned up a lot in terms of what you've actually shared with us, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. And what was kind of the response you got when you started sharing some of these things that people say to you online
So
and
I'm
others
actually
online?
going to read some of the responses to the wall of shame right now, and they've all been positive. Like I have actually not had anyone, harass me after, or I've posted those walls of shame. So some of the responses I've gotten are, that sucks. I've certainly had my fair share of comments like these too. I'm sorry you had to endure this when you just want to have a good time, or any other time probably. Don't let it get to you. Thanks for sharing. I can imagine that requires quite some strength.
Mm.
Another one from a fellow gamer was saying, well, I mean, most of my followers are fellow gamers. People are gross. This makes me so angry. This is horrible. I've experienced sexist and horrible comments when playing WoW.
And how did you find this exercise help you personally? So it obviously showed, being able to kind of share your experiences with other people and getting their feedback. Like, that's really lovely to hear that other people have supported you. How does that actually help you?
Like I almost see it as a bit of a cathartic exercise. Like to write it all out is almost like to externalize all the hurt that's been done to me. Like to write it on paper is like to separate myself from it. So it's definitely quite healing too.
Yeah, and I think that's important to really recognize, because I know there's a lot of different exercises I use from a background in the sporting world of using a diary every day to write things down. No matter what comes to your head, it's writing down the thoughts that are in your head, and really kind of understanding what's existing, because at the end of the day, people are saying these things to you. Those words are going into your head, and getting them out of your head and flushing out that negativity is really, really important. How have you, you've become someone who wants to advocate for this side of the world, and you want to improve the online community. What are some of the strategies you've kind of gone through so far? I know we've discussed some policy changes in different organizations you've been around. What are some other things you've done? We'll definitely want to talk about that policy change, but I wanted to also talk about what you do personally to if it be taking a break, or different ways to deal with the, I guess, the stress of these experiences.
So certainly there have been times where I'll take a break from gaming altogether. Like if I feel like enough is enough, I don't want to subject myself to it anymore. And that's absolutely fair to take a break.
Yeah. Okay. And what about, can you tell us just a little bit more about the organization you were you I think you still play with them, or you were
Yes.
playing with them?
Well, I don't really play for a team for them, but
Yeah.
I mean I'm part of them, and that's UBC Esports, University of British Columbia Esports Association.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest esports clubs actually in Canada, and I think maybe even North America. And I'm actually not a UBC student, but they're open to everyone, and I joined because I was looking for an esports community at the time.
Yeah. And you went
So
through an experience there, didn't you?
yes, so I was just about to get to that, and there was an incident where I was noticing a lot of hate speech being used during our events, and the only events I've been to are like casual online matches, and because I haven't played in any tournaments, and I was getting really concerned about that. I brought it up with the CSGO director that, this is not okay. But eventually I took it up with the president of the club saying that we got to do something about this. This is just not okay. There needs to be specific policies. And him and I had a few chats and said, you're right, we need to update our policies because our policies are like 4 years old. And they were very vague at the time. The policy just says respect each other, or something like that, the old policy.
Yeah.
And now the new policy specifically says no kind of harassment or bullying will be tolerated, especially in particular, like specifically relating to homophobic, sexist, racist,
Yeah.
ableist harassment will not be tolerated.
And why do you think it's so important to define that within the policy? I mean, I have my own beliefs that, but why do you think it's so important to define what respect is or how to act?
Because I guess some people may think, oh yeah, it's perfect. That's perfectly respectful because I'm just joking, And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the person who made some inappropriate comments at an event thought he was just playing around. And me and the president came to a consensus that no, even if you're just messing around, this is not the place for it. That if you and your friends are playing together and you want to trash each other, you want to put each other down and then laugh it off, do that in your own games, not in games where there's other people that may not take your joke the same way.
I agree 100% with that. I think it's
because even when I'm playing with my friends, sometimes we call each other names and we tell each other you suck, and none of us get hurt because we all know each other and we know that we don't mean it deeply.
Yeah, and there's it's almost there's that friendship that's already built in that situation. And I think as we move into a more professional, esports world, and we've talked about this a fair bit on the podcast before about a need for governance and a need for updated policy, a governing body that really nurtures, I guess, the competitive aspect of esports as if it was a professional sport, or a professional organization, that these things exist not only to protect players, but also to show and align themselves as a brand that, they stand for something. And the word respect, must respect, just isn't strong enough as a vision or as a meaning. So I think it's really good to see that you were able to impact that change. What was the I guess the result for those players that were causing, I guess, that disrespect or that harassment in at that university?
I know that some of those players, they were given a talking to by the game director, but I know that the president is saying that whenever we hold any official events, all players are required to read through those updated policies and agree to them before they can participate, and that punishment will be taken. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but it's that punishment will be issued if necessary, and there are definitely warnings about what would happen if you violate the code of conduct during an event. And even specifically, it says in the new updated policy that even if those inappropriate comments were made as a joke, it's not okay, that this is not the place for it, basically.
I got a question around this because from my experience, online has a high amount of toxicity, but going on LAN, the amount of toxicity is reduced quite a lot in my experience. Like, it was quite fun actually. The LAN people were very friendly, were helping you out. And I was wondering, with UBC, did you experience any offline events?
I've only been to one, but it's just because, like I said, I don't compete. So
yeah.
But I have definitely been to other lands, and I definitely would say I did not get any harassment at all. And definitely, you're right that I think it's the anonymity of the online world that lets people see how much they can get away with. It's because, you'll never see that other person again for the most part. But people tend to forget that behind every username, there is a real person with real feelings that can be hurt.
Yeah, I think that was my experience too. And I believe maybe it could be applied the other way as well. Like, because when you're on LAN and you get, like, say you get someone that is toxic, I had this experience. There was one person that was always like coming in and saying, "Oh, you can't play," and quickly you got support from people because, in my opinion, people in general, like offline, they are pretty nice people. Like they were supporting me,
Mm.
and they not me personally, but they were supporting the person that was getting harassed, I would say, or bullied, and so you get support very quickly and you recover very quickly. That person didn't really remember this, like from the line, remembered the enjoyable moments, right? But when you're online, the victim is kind of lonely as well on the other side, right? Did you feel that that could be like a factor of making the feeling even worse for you?
Yes, definitely. That, it just felt very isolating for sure. That, knowing they were singling me out, knowing that I will never know who these people really are. And that sometimes I wonder, could the person who harassed me a week ago online be sitting behind me on the bus?
Hmm. Yeah, and they would, right? Like I have a friend actually, like when I was playing in France, he he was pretty toxic online before we met, and then he grew up, right? And he realized, but like he came back to me after 1 year and said, "Hey, like I feel so bad about all the people I have like made felt bad before because I was alone at home, so I thought there was nothing, but they were probably alone too, and they were probably alone, like in like being sad and being depressed and having no support to help them." One thing maybe I want to move to is the support, right? Like because you mentioned in your incident that when you meet someone nice, you try to stick with them and try to play with them. Like we've talked a lot
Hmm.
about the negativity, but I think online there are also a lot of, maybe not, I don't know if a lot, but there are some people that are very positive
Oh, of
and helping.
course. Of course.
And I wanted to know maybe if you could share some of your experience with that positivity online.
Yes. So there was this person I used to play with a lot until he kind of moved on, that, always looked out for me, always even gave me constructive criticism about my gameplay and where I can improve. And I always appreciated that. And one time we were in a game together and people were harassing me. They were being very inappropriate towards me. And then he just starts sending me messages on Steam saying, "Hey, it's not your fault. Just hang in there. It's not you." And asking me, like, after every round if I'm okay and how I'm feeling. And I was really surprised that for somebody who I literally just met a week ago, who I don't even know who they are in real life, to be doing that to me. I was really touched by that.
And I guess, the emotions, the differing emotions, what is the outcome when someone shows you support? And I know it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but the difference from being harassed to support, what is your first emotion that you want to do when it comes to esports?
Like, what do you mean?
I guess it's that difference of taking a break to wanting to be more involved, to wanting
Of
to
course, like
be.
I want to play more, and then when people are supportive towards me, I feel more motivated.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to acknowledge from the aspect we're coming at, because the people that do have the power to change this, I mean, not it comes to an individual and the way they behave, but there are also people who drive this culture from the top end down, and it's important that they understand that if they want success long term, that from the individual perspective, being supportive and having a culture of building people up equals a bigger business and a bigger community for everybody. So what I think it's really interesting to come back to. You also did a board for positive quotes, right?
I'm actually going to pull it up right now.
Yeah, and I think this is awesome. This comparison of the harassment board, and this positivity board, and I'd love to hear more about why you did the opposing one, and why, what was your thoughts behind that and why you did it.
So it was just an idea I had because I had just posted a wall of shame the previous day from when I posted the wall of pride as a contrast. That I'm thinking, well, if I'm writing out all the negative things people are saying to me, why don't I write out the positive things people are saying to me too?
Yeah, and I love it so much. I'd love to hear, some quotes from it, but also what the feedback was when you posted that from your followers.
I didn't have any direct comments relating to that, but I did have people saying that that was wonderful. And when I first brought up the idea with my followers that should I make a wall of pride showcasing all the positive things people have said to me, and the support was just pouring in saying, yes, you should do that. So I'm just going to read out. Most of these things were said by teammates. Like, some are strangers, but some are teammates that I've played regularly with. Don't listen to them. You have a nice voice. It's okay. You just need more practice. It's better to swallow your anger and be the bigger person, so to speak. Positive vibes only. If you're toxic, get lost. Every game is a lesson. Well done. In light of what's happening, you shouldn't be saying that. And of course, this one really like resonates with me. And you may not agree with what she said, but we shouldn't kill our teammates. And that was said by a stranger.
Yeah, and
That
that's
was not
awesome.
somebody I was playing regularly with.
Yeah,
Somebody stood up for me.
Yeah, and I guess I want to ask an attaching question to this. How do you find more people like this? Like, how have you found a way to find more positive online communities within the
Well,
CS:GO
like
world?
usually it starts off with just the regulars I play with, and then like they invite their friends, and obviously like we all agree we don't like toxicity. Otherwise, I wouldn't be playing with them.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And what was the support when you posted this online? These wonderful comments and this this positive energy.
I didn't have any direct responses to it.
Okay, as in comments from
Yeah.
followers. Which
Yeah.
why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's an interesting reflection on the online. You got esports and gaming has its own kind of online culture, but I think social media does as well, where outrage and negativity flourishes, and positivity kind of takes a backseat to that, which I've always found really, really interesting, which kind of reflects us, I guess, as a whole society at the moment. And you can see it around the world at the moment, just even things like politics, having a real similar vibe, where you post you post the outrage and the things that people find disgusting, true or not, and the following and the belief and the passion behind it is so much more extreme than saying what someone's done well, or what they're doing well. And yeah, I think that at a more micro level, that's what you might have seen there.
And I think it's just because there's something, like, I think within all of us, that we are drawn to tragedy for some reason. We are drawn to death and violence and suffering. Like, it catches our attention.
Yep. I have one question actually around the positivity. I want to use that time that we have you. I think you have been like very active on that topic, and I want to use this time to actually give advice to the people that are going to watch it, and mostly people like me. I remember when I was young, sometime I was like 13 or 14 playing Counter-Strike, and I would feel that someone is getting bullied online, right? And I was very shy as a kid, so I wouldn't say anything. I know something is wrong, but I wouldn't say, I wouldn't have the courage to speak or say anything to the others. If you were, like, let's say you were able to talk to those, like to me when I was 13, and what kind of things you would tell me, and what kind of advice would you give me to be able to speak up and help?
So it took me a long time to build up the courage to be able to speak up against this issue, for sure. But if I do notice somebody else is being bullied, I would definitely be telling them that it's okay. It's not your fault. I would just let them know that they don't have to endure this, that they did not do anything to deserve it, because I've been there myself.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Like when you help online, I've been involved in a few time helping out online while playing. Either once it was a girl, and then the other time it was just a kid, right? Because I don't know here, but in France, when kids were playing, the older people were making fun of them, like stop playing, you should go to another game, and they would not accept like the beginners in the community. And even when I was playing 1.6, there was no ranking system. So we were doing the ranking in IRC. So on the chat, we were saying, okay, I'm this level. And so we were jumping in the game. And sometimes, the kids, actually, one of the kids became friend with me. He was on purpose saying he is a higher rank so he can play against like people that are very strong. So he can progress and meet his goal of being a professional, which I thought was super smart. Because he was able to cope with like 10, 20 defeat during one day, and he didn't care. He would keep going just to become good. And so I think it's important for the community to take the courage and speak up, like against this toxicity, not only to obviously to defend the person that is being bullied, but also to make the other person understand that this is not right. Like whatever they're doing, which probably they're not doing offline, is not right to do it online. And there would be other people speaking against them, not only the one being bullied, but more people. And I think that's very important. And just getting that, I wanted to transition to another topic. I think it's something that we see online, as we discussed. If someone is offline, he probably wouldn't do this because you have this human connection and you have this face-to-face connection. You are scared of the feeling of hurting the other person, but also of saying something inappropriate to damage the relationships that's being created. And I wanted to understand what's your take on why people are doing these kind of crazy things online and not offline. Do you have any opinion around that?
So certainly what I've said before, that it's an anonymous environment and that you're never going to see this person again. But I definitely want to say that there is certainly like a cultural aspect to it too, and why the esports world has become like this. There is a player in the CS:GO scene that's very notorious for being extremely toxic and has been banned from Twitch several times, and that's Simple. If you've heard of him.
Yep.
And these young players are looking up to these superstars and seeing how they behave, and when they see it, they think it's okay. Like another example is the DJ Dead Mouse, who a couple of years ago I can't remember when, was banned from Twitch for a comment he made on stream. And Dead Mouse, not only as a gamer but as a DJ, as a musician, is being looked up to by a lot of people, and a lot of young people, and a lot of young people are seeing that he is behaving this way. And that's not the first time he's made inappropriate comments. Like, I know he's been getting into trouble for saying some things. And there's this trickle down effect where they see, oh, my hero's doing it, it must be okay. And a similar analogy I'd like to use is like, the NFL, with a lot of players getting into legal trouble for sexual assault and violent crimes, and these young people are looking up to these players.
Yeah, I think across the world you can see this effect. I know in Australia we have a lot of issues with our football superstars over here, our rugby and mainly rugby league superstars getting a lot of trouble for many different things, and you can see it. You can see the effect it has. Even from my background tennis perspective, we're very lucky to have some incredible advocates at the top level: Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. But in Australia, we also have a few interesting characters who are renowned for not trying, when they're playing at the top level. And I definitely saw it working with kids, it was almost cool not to put effort in when you trained or when you played. And it was a very strange thing to witness. So I think it's really, really important that, top organizations understand who are their advocates and, who are the people at the top who do younger players coming through and other people look up to, because, it makes sense, right? If you want to be successful, you replicate successful people. It makes total sense. And it's a bit of a monkey see, monkey do. I guess the other thing we've kind of discussed in the past, Jess, is you've talked about almost having, pity for other people. That it's obviously when someone affects your life like this, it's quite upsetting, but in a weird way, you also feel sorry for them. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, like as somebody who has endured real life bullying and harassment throughout my life for various reasons, like I know it hurts, but at the same time you kind of wonder, like, what's going on in that person's mind, that maybe they are hurting too. Maybe they got bullied at school. Maybe they live in an abusive household or something, and they just have no way to express that anger. They have no healthy way of expressing it. And from what I've heard about real life bullying or any kind of bullying, it's that it's hurt people who hurt others.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really important to recognize, especially if you're a parent, to monitor, if you're monitoring someone's, your child's behavior online, just have a think, what's causing them to go online and out, go kind of lash out at other people, and just be mindful of what's happening at school, or, are they going, giving
That
you,
I agree. It's that you shouldn't, that if you're a parent and you notice your child has been bullying people online or behaving inappropriate online, your knee-jerk reaction is probably just to get mad at them and say, hey, you're grounded, you're not allowed to go online anymore. But before you jump to that, I think it's better to take a more compassionate approach and see, are they struggling at school? Are they being bullied themselves? And maybe trying to get to the root of it.
yeah. And I think it's that kind of links into a little bit of the issue that, exists in gaming, obviously, with gaming addiction, not having that balance of life of, if you're, there's some reasons, other reasons for gaming addiction around reward centers in your brain and things like that. But the other one
I
is
actually wrote an entire write-up about that back when Fortnite was being sued last year
okay.
for promoting addictive behaviors. And I don't know if should I just read the whole thing, or should I just
Give
give a
us,
summary of it?
yeah, give us a summary. I really, want to hear. I know you told me about this. I want to hear more about it.
So first, I was saying that it's kind of unfair that they're singling out Fortnite because it's the popular game at the time, and kids as young as 8 are playing it, and everybody's all about Fortnite. So I think any game has the potential to be addictive. And I say that I grew up in a very gaming positive family. My dad was a gamer himself. He got me into it. We played the old Counter-Strike together a few times, but did he just let me play for hours and ignore chores and homework and getting to bed on time? No, he did what a good parent should and make sure I still take care of important things while still allowing me to enjoy myself. So yes, he did make sure I got all my homework done, I got my chores done, and I went to bed on time while still allowing me to have fun. And of course, yeah, I threw a fit every time I was told to go do my homework instead of playing Counter-Strike. But I think it was for the better. And I'm glad that he was able to set those limits with me. And I think as a parent, you have to be the one to set those limits.
Hmm.
That you can't just go around suing Fortnite because you failed your job, that you
Yeah.
didn't take care of your kids. And the analogy I use, it's like suing an ice cream company because your kids ate too much and their teeth got rotten, or suing the manufacturer of a bike because your kid fell off and hit their head because they didn't want to wear a helmet and you didn't want to make them wear a helmet.
Yeah. And you're kind of saying that a lot of this comes back to strong leadership from home, really, from who's
Yes.
witnessing this and making sure you know
Yes.
what's happening. I think, yeah, and I think you're 100% on the money with that. When you see this is where it really does start. I mean, a lot of the ownership has to come back onto the people who are,
It
you know,
just
in
reminds me
charge.
back from when the Nintendo Wii came out and people were throwing the remote so hard that they were smashing their TVs, and then they were suing Nintendo for creating a dangerous product. Yeah, that went on for a while. And
Yeah,
then Nintendo started putting warnings in their
yeah,
systems and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it was up to the people that they shouldn't be throwing their remotes around, and they should be watching where they're playing so they don't hit anyone, rather than, just being reckless and then putting the blame on someone else or something
yeah.
else.
And I think it's really important as well as to recognize that lashing out behavior that, you know, sometimes gaming addiction or kids, or it's not always kids, but people, you know, someone a very, very smart guy who runs a company called Genuine Gaming once explained it to me that, you know, you need to be careful that a kid can go to school, spend all day struggling at school at mathematics or English, or they're having some issues at school and the virtual world is the only place where they can escape what they're going through, you know. And it's a way, you know, the addiction isn't so much from winning or losing, it's from not being in the real world. And it's really
That kind of
important to,
reminds me of that movie Ready Player One. Have you seen it?
yeah,
Yeah, that how he lives in the slum, he's poor,
yeah,
no, he has no friends.
yeah. And I think it's really, really relevant, and it's important to
I think that
recognize
movie
that.
is actually more of a social commentary than most people realize.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at the end
And
as
I
well
love
that,
movies that are social commentaries.
yeah, I'm pretty sure at the end of that film, one of the results is that they actually shut the game down for a couple of days a week so people live in the real world, um, which is to kind of get people out there and to solve what's happening in their life. And I think that's really important. If you're someone who, you know, if you're looking at yourself properly and you know, taking a checklist of, have I done this stuff before? Have I lashed out online? And you know, what was actually happening in my normal life? And audit yourself, you know, say, do I want to be that person? And if I have done that, not, you know, what has happened in my life at that time, what to make me kind of do that? And you're not, you know, it can be rectified by being, you know, next time you're online, be supportive, figure out a way to be someone who builds up your community, builds up your passion. But it starts with taking a good look in the mirror, which is really hard to do. You know, a lot of people do struggle with that.
That you can't face your own flaws, so you point out other people's in the harshest way possible to make yourself feel bigger and stronger.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, I think it's a really good place for a start from an individual level. What I want to move to is more of that macro level. And actually, last time we spoke, you were telling me a lot about Twitch's policies that they're taking on, and I want to know more about, you know, if we, and I always say this in our podcast, if you're an esport god and you had control over where this world was going to, what would you want to do from that higher level? Let's start with Twitch's policy, but what else would you add to that?
I mean, the bigger companies can only do so much with their policies, because with any policy, it's up to people to obey them. I mean, yeah, they can suspend or ban people who break them, but it's not changing the culture. Like I was saying, going back to people like deadmau5 and Simple, who young people look up to and see this kind of behavior, even not just on Twitch, but on other platforms too, like deadmau5 and what he said on Twitter. You know, I think it's up to the people with that power, like the big name streamers that are getting banned for inappropriate behavior. It's up to them, to think about their behavior and lead by example, so that the young people looking up to them, are going to realize that, no, this is the way to behave online, and this is the way to become successful.
Yeah, and I guess that does. I mean, from a business perspective, if I wanted to change and attract parents to esports, you know, as you know, they are, at the end of the day, parents are the ones who are probably funding esports because they're the ones putting the money into it. There's a whole plethora of people that, you know, enjoy and put money into the esports industry who aren't kids, but the future sits with kids because they're the ones coming through.
Of course.
I would be putting a lot of my money and I guess my direction into people that represent what brand we want to align with. You know, kind of like, I like to call it the Roger Federer the Roger Federer system, that whoever you want your brand to be like, you make them number one. So what do you think the esports world could do in a similar aspect to that? Who are the people they need to get out there and get behind?
People like Stephanie Harvey, Miss Harvey, who is actually a female gamer who has spoken up a lot about her experience with online harassment. And it's actually her experience and her advocacy that inspired my advocacy, that inspired me to raise awareness for this issue.
Yeah.
And she's very outspoken about it, and I'm sure people still harass her now that she's she's got such a high profile, although being a female gamer, she's kind of taken the backseat when it comes to the professional competitions, because if you look at all esports competitions, it's all male.
Yeah. And I know that's
just like with any professional sport, like how the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, it's all male. Like the only time you see women's sports on TVs for the most part is during the Olympics, and even then they get less viewership than the male sports.
Yeah. And it kind of, I know that the argument for a lot of people that don't believe in this is they'll say, but who's sitting in the stands, who's putting the money towards it? But it's not about that. It's about, you've got to build a profile. We need to build the support for the profile, and just to attract more attention. It's to bring a whole community, and you've already got 90% males. Like, you've got that market. There's a whole nother market.
Although
out
they
there.
do say that now, I think 50% of gamers are female now.
Oh wow! Okay, that's incredible. So I think it's just at that
but
top
not
end.
At the high level. Yes, like at the esports level, it is all male.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and this is interesting, like because I mean, in sport, for example, people take the argument that like you can't make mixed team because of the physical differences, right? But with esports, I personally don't believe that there is like any kind of difference between a guy and a girl playing the game.
For sure. Even though teams like, I know Dignitas has Dignitas Women, they have a separate team for women. And why do they do that? Like, why don't they just have co-ed teams?
Yeah.
So that's something I like. I'm wondering, right? Like, is it because, in my opinion, playing the game, I don't see where it could make a difference.
I think it's just for marketing, if anything else, because I do notice that the female teams, like, they do kind of tend to be a bit sexualized. Like, I know they're kind of presented in a sexy way, whereas the male teams, the regular teams, are just presented like a team.
Yeah. Yeah. So it comes back to marketing. Yeah. It comes back to what they want to try to get out of it.
Yeah, because when I was young, like it was understandable that it was mainly male, because when I was playing, actually, there was actually no girl interested in playing. So like most of the players were actually, maybe it was, to be honest, I went to a LAN, it was mostly 100% male, or it was like one girl amongst like 200 guys.
That's what my experience at LANs has been too. Like, it's been a whole room full of males.
And that's like more interesting, because when it was offline, like the girl was getting like really taken care of. She was getting a lot of attention, but nicely.
That's what's my experience too. Like, people were not behaving inappropriate towards me. They were actually like supporting me. They were actually saying, because I am a lower level than all the other people I was playing with, and they know that. So they were like, hey, maybe try checking your angles next time, or hey, aim a little higher.
Do you think the current consequences are enough to mitigate the behavior at the moment from the top end? People being banned
certainly, like with deadmau5, like, I know that he actually chose to leave Twitch after he got banned for that incident, because I know that he's saying, he's one of those people, he's like the type of person that would accuse people of being too sensitive or being special snowflakes. So that's why he quit Twitch, is because he thinks, they're catering to the special snowflakes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So what about other scenarios where, I mean, other players have been banned for derogatory behavior or things like that? Is that enough? Is it a 6-month ban or a 12-month ban?
I'm not sure because I'm actually kind of new to Twitch myself. I just started streaming, and I mean, even I would never say anything derogatory, but I'm like really nervous. Am I okay to say this? Sometimes I'm wondering. I mean, it's okay to swear on Twitch, as we know, but
Yeah.
derogatory behavior is a no. And it's like, what can be interpreted as derogatory? I mean, there are some things that are very obviously derogatory, but then there's like that gray area too.
Yeah.
So that I'm like kind of thinking I don't want to overstep.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that might be something you have to explore down the track about, different scenarios and what our thoughts are around them. What I want to kind of start rounding off with is, talking directly to people who are in your scenario, who have been affected, either being affected, gone through it, or really interested in this as their long-term passion, possibly career, industry of choice. What would you say are the three most important things for people who are going through similar experiences, as you?
So it's just to remember that it's not you, it's them, to hang in there, and that there's nothing wrong with taking a break if you really just need to give yourself a break, because being treated like that is draining, and it is hurtful, it is exhausting, and you shouldn't have to force yourself to suffer.
Yeah. And where can they do you know any places they could reach out? Where could they go? Who's the first, point of call? Is it to put a complaint in? Is it to,
So
is there a group?
definitely, if your game has an abuse report system, which most games do, how seriously they take it, I am not sure. It varies from game to game. Definitely to file a report, and to anyone else involved. Like if you were playing with a friend that was also witnessing that, even if not directly affected by it, to also file a report, because strength in numbers.
Okay, perfect. And my last kind of topic question is to the people that might be causing the harassment. If you could leave them with one message, what would it be?
Check your privilege.
Yeah.
It's a powerful one, and it's also a hashtag on Instagram.
Yeah, wonderful.
But yeah, check your privilege. That the fact that you have the privilege to say things like that without much consequence. Where are you coming from? Like say if you were making a racial comment towards someone, chances are you are someone who could just walk down the street without ever fearing that you would hear that word shouted at you.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. It's quite powerful. The last thing I wanted to ask is, people who want to get behind you, support your advocacy. How can they do that?
So you can definitely find me on Instagram. My Instagram is it's Siferra, ITS.SIFERRA. You can also find me on Twitch. It's Siferra89, SIFERRA89. So far, I've only been streaming Among Us, but I do hope to start streaming other games. And just so you know, for both my Instagram, my Twitch, or any other forms of contact with me, like any other social media, I maintain that those are all hate speech free zones. And if you violate that, you will be blocked and reported.
Yeah, amazing. Jess, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this is stuff that we can't talk about. We need to hear it from people like yourself who've actually experienced it, and it can help us understand, how deep it can go and what it's like to actually to experience it. So thank you so much for taking the time to share it with us, and really, really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. It's something I'm very passionate to speak about.